Writing literature review, the organization of your text. It's really important to know what strategies, what techniques are to be used while writing down your text. And by text, I mean the language which you would decide while submitting, while presenting the information which you collected while your survey of literature, right? So it's really important for researchers to know the techniques to organize your text very effectively and very efficiently. There are strategies which could be applied for adopting a critical approach while you are presenting various kinds of information, and that information is to be presented in a very particular way. So that particular way is to be decided by a researcher, right? So you would organize your text in a very careful manner, right? Because that's to be decided very meticulously. Your selection of a single verb, your action verb, would change the meaning, right? So you are required to know that what kinds of verbs are to be decided, what kind of particular adjectives and nouns and pronouns are to be decided, and that is really important, particularly for the linguistic quality of your thesis, because the language is to be used very effectively, right? So that's something which is to be important. And your selection of text, your selection of language would definitely project your voice into text. So how would you like to project your voice? What position you would like to take? So whatever position you would like to take is just on the basis of your selection of text, your selection of language, right? You may be using the personal pronouns in a very effective, very efficient way. The personal pronouns like I and we, right? So that would show a lot of things. Like, for example, you would take the responsibility when you would recommend something, right? So that showing of personal pronoun, I and we, would give different meanings, right? So you would be using evaluative verbs, adjectives, and of course, verbs and phrases. Your selection, your choice of a particular adjective would make the source, reliable to your readers, okay? Similarly, the selection of verbs would also share the responsibility, right? So I would be giving you some examples that the propositional responsibility is just on the basis of textual voice, right? Your selection of language would share, or would determine the propositional responsibility of the sources which you explored in your literature review and which you are required to submit in your literature review. Similarly, different degrees of commitment are shown with the selection of words, right? So your language must be very carefully, very meticulously used. And let me give you some examples that how the selection of different verbs, different words would change the context. Okay, so let's go to the examples. It's a table where the textual voice is to be determined. So you can see that the prepositional responsibility is on writer when a particular kind of text is used, right? And in this case, like for example, in this, when the writer is saying that global warming is a serious risk to the planet, okay? So in this case, the author is absent and the writer is central, right? And the prepositional responsibility is totally on the writer, right? Now, if the same information is given in a different way, right, then the responsibility is shared. Then it's not only on writer, right? Although the writer is dominant, but the author is also present there and the author is subordinate. Like for example, when the same statement is given in a way like global warming is a serious risk to the planet, right? And the source is given in bracket, Clark 2006, right? So it's the shared responsibility. Similarly, if the same statement is given in a very different way, shared, but the corresponding connection is there between the authors and between the authors and writer. As Clark 2006 points out, global warming is a serious risk to the planet, right? So it's now the shared because you are referring to Clark, but at the same time, you are presenting in such a way that you are also the part of the responsibility, right? Similarly, the next example shows that the writer is subordinate, the author is dominant, right? And the responsibility is still shared. Like, for example, Clark 2006 points out the global warming is a serious risk to the planet. So you see, just the selection of text, the selection of verbs, and the position of words, that is actually determining the responsibility. The last example is also very interesting. Now the responsibility is on author, right? And the writer is delayed, but the author is central in this sentence, right? So Clark argues that global warming, right? So it's now the argument which is on the basis of author. You may disagree at the end because your position is delayed, right? And another form of this sentence could be like, according to Clark 2006, global warming, right? So you must be very carefully, very meticulously using your language. Let me just give you one more example of the selection of words, right? So in this example, the linguistic strategies are shown with different degree of commitment, okay? So there is a column, in the first column, the showing strong commitment. Like, for example, from the sources in the 1500s, it is clear that, right? So this word, clear, right? It is clear. So there is a strong commitment. In summary, it is beyond doubt. So this phrase, beyond doubt, is actually showing the strong commitment on the part of the author. Similarly, hence, it does not come as a surprise that, right? Aptly, Simthi 2005 emphasized how, to date, the strongest argument against punitive measures is made by. So just see that in the first column, there is a strong commitment shown by the researcher, and it is only and only on the basis of linguistic strategy used, right? In the second column, the agreement is there, but it is not as stronger as given in the first column, right? The agreement is there. Like, following issues demonstrate that, so it's on the part of the author that the agreement is shown. The examples given earlier show Todd 1990 provides a useful approach to, right? This definition of sustainability is more comprehensive because, so there is an agreement shown in these examples. And in the last column, the very cautious commitment is given, right? So the writer is very careful here in this column, right? Like in this first example, Hancock hypothesizes that, right? So it's very cautious commitment. The hypothesis is on the part of the reference, Hancock, right? Then on a larger scale, these discussions suggest, right? So you are not taking a particular position, you are not agreeing very clearly, very explicitly, and your strong commitment is not given in this example. So you just see that your choice of language, your linguistic strategies show different degrees of commitment, and a researcher is required to be very careful about the selection of words, particularly in showing those references and constructing literature review.